joins me from New Orleans. He actually has been spending the weekend in Louisiana. Senator, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Good to be with you, Chuck.
You're in Louisiana, so let me start with the tragic news there and get into the politics of it a little bit, which is having to do with the issue of gun control. A lot of Democrats, President Obama has expressed some remorse that he hasn't been able to make more progress on gun control. And you've continued to straddle a line here. You talk about your sort of pro-NRA votes in Vermont having to do with being about Vermont, not about the nation as a whole.
Chuck, that's not what I said. I come from a state which has virtually no gun control, and yet I voted to ban certain types of assault weapons. I voted to close the gun show loophole, and I voted for instant background checks. And what I said is that as a nation, we can continue screaming at each other, or else we've got to find common ground.
Well, what is that? What is that? Because
common ground is, for a start, universal instant background checks. Nobody should have a gun who has a criminal background, who's involved in domestic abuse situations. People should not have guns who are going to hurt other people, who are unstable. And second of all, I believe that we need to make sure that certain types of guns used to kill people exclusively, not for hunting, they should not be sold in the United States of America. And we have a huge loophole now with gun shows that should be eliminated. There may be other things that we have to do. But coming from a rural state, I think I can communicate with folks coming from urban states where guns mean different things than they do in Vermont where it's used for hunting. That's where we've got to go. We don't have to argue with each other and yell at each other. We need a common sense solution.
You bring up the instant background checks. If you look at it appears to be the situation in Louisiana, the situation in Charleston, there were background checks made and they didn't work. They didn't catch what was necessary. Instant background checks lead to more speed and more mistakes. Don't you need longer waiting periods?
Well, what we need to do is whatever we need is a system that works. Bottom line is, I hope that nobody in America disagrees that people, as in the case of the shooter here in Louisiana, who has a history of mental instability, should not be having guns. People who have criminal backgrounds, people who are abusing wives or girlfriends should not be having guns. That is the issue that I think we can bring people together around.
I guess, Mike, going back to that question, we have those laws on the books, and it's not working.
And we've got to make them stronger. We've got to make them more enforceable. That's what we've got to do.
All right, I want to move to, you last night spoke at the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Of course, it's a major civil rights organization, a lot of history there. But I want you to play a clip that you had sort of a reaction last week at Netroots Nation in a confrontation with the Black Lives Matter protest.
I didn't have a confrontation. What I had was, I was there to speak about immigration reform. And some people started disrupting the meeting. And the issue that they raised was, in fact, a very important issue about Black Lives Matter, about Sandra Bland, about black people getting yanked out of, in this case of Sandra Bland, getting yanked out of an automobile, thrown to the ground, and ending up dead 3 days later because of a minor traffic violation. So this is not this is issues which is a very important issue, an issue of concern that I strongly share.
Well, I guess there were some people who felt that you were being too dismissive of the protesters.
No, I'm not dismissive. I've been involved in the civil rights movement all of my life. And I believe that we have to deal with this issue of institutional racism. But this is what I also believe. And speaking to the SCLC last night, this is what I quoted. Martin Luther King, when he died, when he was assassinated, understood and was working on a poor people's march. We have to end institutional racism, but we have to deal with the reality that 50% of young black kids are unemployed, that we have massive poverty in our country, and we have an unsustainable level of income and wealth inequality.
The criticism that's come to you at this, though, is that your answer is always economic injustice, and that many African-American activists believe, no. You've got to deal with racism is a separate, institutional racism is a separate problem from economic injustice.
They are parallel problems. They are absolutely correct. But as Martin Luther King Jr. told us, we have to address both. We have to rid this country of racism. What we saw in Charleston, South Carolina, a few weeks ago, a guy motivated by hate groups who goes out and kills black people because they're black. Sandra Bland being yanked out of a car, dying 3 days later for what? For minor traffic violation. But my view is that we have got to deal with the fact that the middle class of this country is disappearing, that we have millions of people working for wages that are much too low impacts everybody,
Right.
impacts the African American community even more. Those are issues that do have to be dealt with just at the same time as we deal with institutional racism.
Let me go to economic injustice. Hillary Clinton on Friday gave a speech in front of a Wall Street crowd showing that she wants to get a little tougher on Wall Street. Does that tell you your campaign is working?
I think my campaign is working. I think a whole lot of people are talking about what I've been talking about for decades, and that it is morally unacceptable that the top 1/10 of 1% of people in this country own almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%, that we have millions of people working for starvation wages, that we've got to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, that we have a trade policy which allows corporations to shut down in America and take our jobs to cheap labor countries abroad. So I think that message is resonating.
Yeah.
I am in red states, I am in blue states,
Right.
and I think the American people want changes in the way we do economics and politics.
This morning, New York Times, Washington Post lump you and Donald Trump as are touching the same chord, but with very different ways. Do you buy that comparison?
No, I don't. I think the chord that we are touching all over this country is that people are profoundly disgusted with an economics that make the richest people richer and everybody else poorer. They are profoundly angered and disturbed by a political campaign system that allows billionaires to buy elections because of this disastrous campaign finance system called Citizens United. And what I have said is, if elected president, we're going to pass a constitutional amendment to get rid of Citizens United so that we'll restore democracy in America and not move to oligarchy. This is a huge, huge issue.
So you don't buy these comparisons to Trump and the chord and the populist chord he's touching either?
No, we are having working people who are saying that it is absurd that almost all new income and all new wealth is going to the top 1%. They can't afford to send their kids to college. They can't afford child care for their kids. They're working longer hours for low wages. We want an economy that works for all of us and not just the billionaire class. We want a campaign finance system that ordinary people can run for office on without being dependent on the Koch brothers and other billionaires.
All right, Senator Bernie Sanders, I'm going to leave it there. I know you've been all over the country these days campaigning. Stay safe on the trail, sir. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.
You got it. Let me bring in the panel here, MSNBC and Telemundo host Jose